So, what's up, BAM fans? This is episode 2 of the BAMCast here. Got myself, Adam Gouker, Coach Jake Banwart, and our new guest for today, Coach Jake Wickliff. Jake, tell me a little about yourself.
Hi, everybody. I am the 17U Signature head coach. My name is Jake Wickliff. This is my second season with BAM. I am continuing on what we started last year with the 16U Signature team, hoping to bring a lot of success at the high school level with these guys, get them on to that next level.
So, our topic today, and I think we have 3 very qualified and talkative gentlemen here for this topic, based on our energy on the field, talking about unwritten rules of baseball. A little bit of superstition mixed into that based on some suggestions we have, but kind of our take on the way those things work and how it affects the game. Did a Instagram poll where we asked a lot of our players, anybody that follows us, some of the way they feel about some of the unwritten rules. Maybe just list off kind of some of the ones that we're most interested in.
So these are still live right now, and they've changed in the last 5 minutes. But if it's acceptable to bunt, to break up a no-hitter, 51% of people believe it is not. 49% think that it's fine. If bat flips are acceptable after a home run, 85% say yes. Stealing signs on the bases or as a hitter, 61% of fans are for it, 39% are against it, and 71% of people think that it is disrespectful and wrong as a hitter to run across the pitcher's mound after you've made an out going back to the dugout. So those were the main 4 that we pulled on. There are a lot of others that we'll probably get on topic with, but I think it's interesting, the 51 to 49 on bunting to break up a no-no,
right,
and what that looks like.
And we're not going to settle any arguments here, but we do have 3 of us. We could go maybe topic by topic, discuss a little bit, do a little bit of a voting if we wanted to.
Deal.
But I think the one to definitely start it off with, and for sure second, do the one that's very down the middle for everybody. But I think the unwritten rule in today's game that has really started all of this off as far as discussing it amongst people our age is the bat flip. And
absolutely,
I mean, public enemy number 1. Shout out to Jose Bautista. He's an avid listener of the podcast. So, but the bat flip, the one that started it all, the Jose Bautista bat flip in the playoffs, the Blue Jays versus the Rangers. I think it's probably safe to say that the majority of people under, the age of like 57 are probably cool with the occasional bat flip. Most people above that age, shout out to George Boots, our local 57-year-old coach, Boots. So, but I think most people younger are probably cool with it in some scenarios. But I mean, I know some people my age that are 100% against them, especially the Jose Bautista bat flip.
You know what? As long as the time in the game and the emotion of the game dictates the bat flip, I have no problem with it. And Bautista's did that. I mean, it was a huge game in the playoffs. If you're up 10-0 and you bat flip like that, now I take exception to that a little bit.
Right.
Or if you're down by 10.
Yes, if you're down by 10, just make it about yourself.
Right.
It's like celebrating the touchdown when you're down 40 points.
Right.
At that point in time, it's irrelevant.
Just don't do that. Nobody
You
cares.
mentioned bat flips on our Instagram, right? As
Yes.
a question. Do you remember what
85% are for them.
Our forum?
For 'em. I bet you most of those 85% never hit dingers.
Oh,
You know what I mean? Like, honestly,
the 15% are
the
pitchers.
15% are pitchers that have had them hit off of them.
15% are pitchers.
And they dislike it. But when Louisville's coaching staff spoke at the Indiana State Clinic a couple of years ago, when they do cycle drill for base running, they end cycle drill, if they do it well, with every player getting to pimp a home run.
Right.
So they actually as funny as it is, they practice how to bat flip and pimp a home run, even at the college level.
So then why does it, and every time it happens to you, it doesn't feel good, and I noticeably, I think I audibly point it out and say I want to do something about it when it does happen. You know what I mean? I remember a time when, and we'll try to, there'll be probably a lot of stories in this. I remember when I played, it was just a fall ball game, a wood bat league, and a kid didn't even bat flip, but he hit a long home run to right field as a lefty and stood there and watched it. And stood for a solid 3 to 4 seconds, and that was my first experience with someone like kind of really celebrating anything that wasn't a game-winning home run or a game-winning hit. And I remember as a catcher, I got up and I helped him with his first few steps down the line, and helped move him down the line because it just turned me inside out. I was so mad about it. But I mean, now as I get older, and maybe it's because I'm not playing, you know what I mean? It doesn't bother me as much, you know? I don't know.
It doesn't bother me at all. I mean, honestly, I think an artist, when they finish a painting, they admire their work. You know what I mean? You don't finish your painting and just throw it away and move on to the next one. So as much as I respect a player who hits a bomb and just takes off, which I love, I think that's cool too. But I mean, heck, if you hit the ball like that, watch it, enjoy it, jog around the bases. I mean, I have no problem with it.
It's also one of those things where when it's happening for you and it's going in your direction, then you're celebrating it. But just like the different areas of gamesmanship in the game of kicking dirt on somebody, or you know, if the way that we in BAM do our base running with the modern type lead, you know, when teams are playing against it, it frustrates them because it works. Or what we've experienced coaching high school ball of running first and third plays offensively, when it's working in your favor, then it's something to be celebrated about. But when it goes against you, that's when you get that salty taste in your mouth. So.
When is it over the line other than like specifically score? Because I'm sure you've seen the most recent one that's kind of clouded up Instagram of the dude that hits the home run, stands there, watches go over the fence, and throws his bat up in the air. That's obviously like, if that happens against you, there's probably some repercussions coming that kid's way. Not that I'm for the game policing itself at the major league level. I'm not going to say we're going to do anything at a kid's level, but that one's clearly wrong. So like, when does it? I mean, at what point is it fine? And like, I mean, obviously there's going to be a fine line there. When's it fine? When's it not?
I think if the whole crowd watches the ball land and still sees your first step, that's probably too much. If you're already taken off, that's one thing. But and there, I don't know if we can give it a height limit, but I mean, the idea of just throwing.
I don't think it was a walk off. I think it was just mid game.
And I hope he was either pegged before that, which caused him to do it, or if he wasn't, that he was pegged after that. Because heck, we played a team out of Alabama, and they had a kid that was stealing signs and stuff, and we hit him his next time up on accident. And their coach from third base was like, "That's what you get for stealing signs. Play the game the right way." So I love coaches that like get the game and are like, "Hey, you do that, that's fine, but expect to get one in the hip, and that's just part of the game."
And
so,
like the argument that I've heard most against it is like, it's disrespectful. It's like, act like you've been there before. And obviously the fire was started when Bautista did that. But if there's ever a time to celebrate a home run, it's in that situation of what he did, because they already had a rivalry to begin with. I mean, I think the punch from Odor happened the year after, right? I mean, and I don't. I mean, it's very easy to root against Bautista. I loved the punch. I was fine with it. Also, I thought the slide that he did was a little dirty. So all of
that's good for baseball.
Yeah, all that's good. All that's good for the game. The major league level for sure. But like, I was watching the Cub game, or highlights of it this morning, and Bautista hit a home run. Javi Baez hit a home run. Shout out to Javi Baez, avid listener to the podcast. He hit a home run yesterday, and watched it. Stood there, grabbed the bat by the barrel, starts like hooting and hollering before he even takes a step. Tosses his bat inside and takes off running. And I know, like, as Cub fans, we love Baez, but I know some Reds fans that are, their team's 24 games out. I mean, they hate him. They can't stand him because they just think he's cocky and everything. I'm thinking, like, it's the Reggie Miller effect. If Reggie was, as a Pacer fan, loved him. If he was on another team, I would have hated him, I'm sure.
But does that come down to fans being able to recognize, like, I love this player, I only hate him because they're not on my team? Or is it the player's responsibility to make everybody like him? Because if I'm competing and I hit a home run, like, don't tell me to act like I've done that before, because I haven't.
Oh, I agree.
So that's awesome. It's like getting your first kiss and acting like you've done that before. You know what I mean? Nobody does that. You're excited about that.
Did you stand there and start yelling at the crowd?
And you should. Around the line? Yeah, you skip home. You skip all the way home.
I hope you didn't do that.
That's a story for a different time. But
I skipped down the hallway. So.
There you go.
Good for you, man. What was that?
No,
was that last Tuesday? Was that your first one?
Yeah.
I think in a game that's, I wouldn't call it slow, but the pace that it is, getting emotion in the game is a good thing for everybody. And understanding, like, I mean, heck, if somebody hits a bomb like that, you got to appreciate it for what it is, even if it's against you. You can be mad in the game based on the result, but I mean, I would do the same thing. I'd admire it a little bit.
And for the pitchers that are completely against it and everything, and then like they want to hit Bautista afterwards, I understand the anger behind it and wanting to hit him or whatever. but I don't want to hear a thing when you're a pitcher and you get the last out of a game and a pitcher turns and stands and does this, shoots the arrow in the air. I'm like, you don't ever get to bat.
Right.
So there's no possible way for us to get back at you as the team other than hopefully breaking up your save.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So if you can do this, Bautista, especially in the playoffs, and Rogers Stadium in Toronto, and that was that Game 7 of that series, or was it Game 5?
5 or 6.
5 or 6.
Yeah.
I mean, that was the time. And I mean, I
Yeah.
love that crowd. I get so disappointed when the Blue Jays don't make it because that is a great crowd to watch in the playoffs.
At this level too, there still needs to be that appreciation of the game. So
Right.
enjoy the moments while it lasts, and at the point in time. Was it last year, the year before, where that kid in the League World Series hit that
And
ball?
the pitcher.
The ball went like 350
Right.
feet, but that pitcher's reaction was priceless.
Right.
That was a pure moment of enjoy the game and admire what just happened.
There's a time and a place. I feel like more than often than not, the time and the place is fine. The kid that stood there, the one that was on Instagram recently, I mean, it is September. It was definitely a fall ball game. Like, he's not playing in a state championship, or, and it was not a World Series game for the majors. So that was a fall ball game. I don't know if there was previous heat between the teams.
Yes.
But I think he took it a little too far, and he's probably got some ice on his elbow after the next at bat.
I will say this, though. I have a harder time with somebody taking an incredibly long amount of time to round the bases than I do with them bat
That bothers me more.
If you watch it, you admire it, and then you take off and you run at a decent pace around the bases, then you're still respecting the game.
I think Baez takes too long. It bothers me how slow Baez runs.
I would agree.
Watch how he runs. If you ever get a chance, watch it after he hits the next home run. They'll show him rounding first base after that home run. Watch how he's going higher in the air on his run than he is vertically. I mean, horizontally towards second base. He is pouncing and trotting. I mean, it is bad. And I just know that. I think his last 4 steps when he gets to the plate are stopping, doing like all these hand
probably,
and I'm like, dude, it's not even October yet.
We're also talking about the guy that got a Major League Baseball tattoo on the back of his neck when he was like 15.
It's just high enough that it's peeking out, you know, just high enough.
In those guys' defense, though, I took a long time to go around the bases.
Even when you got a single, you took a long time, though.
No, all of the home runs that I ever hit in my life.
Slow?
I know I was really slow. The only reason it took me a long time to run around the base is because I was really slow. So that was
I'm not being a jerk. I'm just tired.
It's a sliding scale based on what it would normally take you and what it actually takes.
Yeah, there was like my full-fledged sprint, and then just very slightly slower than that was my trot.
Right.
But it still was really slow.
Yeah. Right.
So don't come at me like that. It took me a while to go around the bases. But you know what? I enjoyed it because I had all eyes on me for about
and that's where they belong.
About 60 seconds worth going around the bases.
Now, if you're a pitcher and you hit a bomb, you take 60 seconds. If Big Sexy hits another home run, I want him to take at least a minute getting around the bases because everybody needs to watch that entire
Probably
thing.
needs, oxygen around second base.
They should give him like the slow pitch softball effect, where he can just hit it and go back to the dugout. You don't even need to go all the way around.
It's a beautiful sight to see, though, when he hits a home run and he's going around.
Yes.
Awesome.
No, in all seriousness, if I have a pitcher that gets mad at me about the other team bat flipping or taking too long, my response as a coach is very simple. Don't give up a home run.
Right.
At the end of the day, if you don't want people to bat flip, keep the ball down, don't miss spots, because most home runs happen on misses.
Right.
So when we're calling pitches, if we call an outside pitch and they miss back over the plate, we gave up a home run high school season last year on an 0-2 fastball a foot off the plate was the call. And it was a lefty that pulled it to right field for a home run, about 380. Clearly, that kid's either like 6'8" and got around the ball, or we missed a spot. So don't look at me like he shouldn't have bat flipped on that when you just missed your spot by 4 feet.
Right.
So that's on you as a pitcher.
Right.
Ball went off the bat, and coach turns and looks at me. Well, that was not a zone 3 fastball.
No, that's not something we called.
That wasn't what we called.
Oh my God.
So I mean, that's.
Granted, none of us are pitchers, so if we had a pitcher in here, he'd probably feel different, but he'd be voted wrong. So I think 3 for 3. I think we all agree bat flips are good.
They're good for the game.
They're good for the game.
Yes.
So all you whiny babies out there that don't like the bat flips, KZ Ozog, I don't want to hear it. Okay, it's a good thing. We want them in the game, and they're going to be in the game here on out. So what were some other topics we talked about?
Before we move on, I'm also all for contact hitters bat flipping on a walk.
Oh yes,
You know what I mean?
100%.
If you're
Yes.
just an on-base
Not-
guy, you're
yeah.
not going to get to bat flip on
Yeah.
home runs. You figure out your thing on a walk.
Yeah. Yeah.
My favorite thing to see on a walk is throwing it towards the wrong dugout, so the next batter's got to go and pick it up. just practice that one for a little while. That guy behind you is not going to be happy.
I know. I mean, that's probably not for us to say that we aren't Bush. You know, I don't think that we are. There's
Don't get me
plenty of
started
other
there.
teams that will probably say that we are. So-
I would say this. I think, and this goes to bat flips and really the unwritten rules. I think there's a difference between unwritten rules and things that people have a hard time defending.
Uh-huh.
And it's gotten to a point that if it upsets you as a coach or a fan, you consider it Bush League.
Mhm.
It's
Okay.
just Bush League. I couldn't defend that well. Like a well-executed first and third situation is now Bush League.
Yeah.
Or a bat flip on a walk-off is Bush League. No, it's not. You just
Right.
lost the game.
Right.
That's just emotion. There's a
Right.
difference in
So,
Bush League
Bu-
and not being able to defend.
So would you say Bush League things to proper unwritten rules that shouldn't be broken?
Yes, I
Okay.
would. I
Okay.
would.
So is standing on a stepping on the foul line, is that a superstition thing? Is that an unwritten rule?
Yes.
Yeah, yes, they're both. They're both. So I would
It's just a
see,
good
I would
one.
see as an unwritten rule as something that if you break, you're probably going to see some form of retaliation from the opponent, not your teammates necessarily. You might get punched in the arm for stepping on the line. When you
Right.
get done.
It offends me more if my players or other
Yeah.
coaches step on the line. If their
Right.
team does it, that's good for us.
Right.
I think so. I think it's more of a
Right.
superstition.
Right.
Still bugs the heck out of me.
Right. I was
But I think it's a
superstitious when I
superstition.
played, but I don't think to the extent to where like I think I probably always jumped over to the line just because I knew that was like what people did. But I don't think if I ever stepped on the line, I was like, whatever. Like I didn't really care.
I've gotten even worse than I've coached it. I've had games within the past few years coaching travel ball. I see a kid coming off the field, step on the line, go back.
Go back.
And go all the way back over the line just
Yeah.
to come back over.
Come
Like,
back.
don't you dare step on the line, bring it in the dugout.
Come back.
Well, that's coming from three coaches who, if we're in the same spots in the dugout and our pitcher's throwing
That's
well
true.
and something's off and they give up a hit, we immediately go back to where we were. I mean, we're playing like Catholic Church stand up, sit down through 7 innings, trying to
Where were
figure,
you sitting?
trying to
Where were you
figure
sitting? I
out
was over here.
right, trying to figure out exactly where we
Your
need to
leadoff
be for
runner's
the
on.
pitcher
Where
to
were
be
we at last
successful.
inning?
All right, it's
Where were we
always
at?
our fault.
Right.
So yeah, I think that's a little different with the superstition side of it.
Mhm.
Players have a ton of superstitions.
Right.
And we could go all day on that. But
Right.
the most split topic we had was bunting to break up a no-hitter.
Right.
Um,
And how was the question formatted? Like, what exactly did you say is the question?
it was, I'll read it.
Right. Because I think there's got to be circumstantial stuff here. You know
Is
what
it
I mean?
acceptable to
Yeah.
bunt to break up a no-hitter? And 49% said, let me double check.
Yeah. Might have
Let me
changed.
see if it changed.
Right.
Nope, 49% says yes, it's acceptable. 51% says no, it's not acceptable.
You have who voted for what on that? Because
Who are you trying to find
what
out?
I want to know, we talked about
I
our
can give you
BAM,
exact
we talked about our
numbers.
BAM short and BAM shorts video that we're going to film.
Yes.
And I think that might be a good one to take. You know, if it's such a split topic, find two kids that are on opposite sides of that, sit down for a quick 5 minutes, you know, in our BAM shorts, and talk,
do have it.
make them debate it.
We do have it, and it's a mix of parents, players, umpires, coaches.
Umpires don't count.
Our Diamond Kinetics
offense.
rep.
What
has
did he say?
voted
What did he
on
vote?
that.
What did he vote?
You know what? We're gonna have him on in a couple of weeks, so let me share that he voted that yes, it is acceptable.
Okay.
So we'll have to ask him about that when we bring
Okay.
him on. But
Okay.
that'll be an interesting one. So yeah, of 50 votes or 49 votes, we're
Right.
25 to 24.
Right.
I look at it on both sides. If my pitcher is throwing a gym no-hitter and somebody bunts to break up that no-hitter, I'm furious.
Right.
Man up and hit the ball. But on the other side of it, if we're getting no hit,
Right.
absolutely, I don't want my team to get no hit.
So what factors go into it though? Because and when does it change in a game to where you're considering it a no-hitter? If you're in the second inning, somebody
Right.
bunts to break up a no-no.
No.
I don't think anybody's offended.
My dad.
So what inning are you now looking at no-hitter?
It's gotta be
Is
the
it
late
halfway through the
innings.
game? Is it?
Right. I asked my dad some questions, you know, just trying to get in the older population, no offense, but. And
Shout out
then-
to Kirk,
Shout out to Kirk Gouker, super old. And then my
George
grandpa Laird, to get his opinion, my grandpa was an avid baseball player, a real good fast pitch softball player, in Anderson, and to get their opinion, and they both said, that bunting to break up a no-hitter in a lopsided game they think is an unwritten rule you shouldn't be doing.
What's considered lopsided?
Exactly.
Is
I
that-
would assume.
So baseball would consider it outside of 3 runs because you can't get a save
Yeah,
anymore.
and I think it's
If it's
outside
4
of
or
3
more.
runs, and I think the times I've seen, at least in the majors, of people being upset about it, is your 8th inning, it's
Final third of the game-ish.
4 or 5 to nothing, and someone lays a bunt down the third base line. I've seen pitchers and pitching coaches from the dugout, hitting coaches from the dugout, the opposing dugout, yelling at guys, and then the next dude gets hit, kind of thing. I think that's the most prevalent example of I see people getting upset about it, and that might be what the people that are voting against it are thinking. But
Sure.
I mean, I don't care. Play defense too. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Expect it.
Here's my thing. If you are a hitter that does that often to get hits, I'm not offended.
Shout out
If
to
you're-
Charlie Hawk.
If you're Charlie Hawk,
If
if you're D Gordon, you're
Uh-huh.
somebody like that who bunts a lot for a hit, and that's part of your game, then asking you to not do that just because it's late in the game is
Right.
taking you out of what you do well.
Right.
If you're Anthony Rizzo and you're trying to bunt through a shift in the 8th inning after you don't do that very often,
Right.
now I'm slightly offended by it. But also, if it's a 1-0 game, I'm trying to win the game. Period.
Right.
I have no.
Mhm.
I mean, I don't have to worry about how I break up your no hitter. I'm not worried about your no hitter. I'm trying to win the game.
Winning the game. Oh, yeah.
So I think most people would agree if you're in a game, you try to win the game.
Mhm.
I mean that the other stuff is secondary.
Right.
But
So that I can see myself siding with that same situation. You're up by 5 runs and somebody lays down the bunt just to break it up just because you're in the late innings for a no hitter. I mean at that point in time, if it's the bottom of the 7th inning in high school ball or top of the 7th inning and that team's down 4 or 5 to nothing, there's 2 outs and they lay that bunt down
Right.
just because of that instance right there. I'm gonna be pretty salty
Yes.
about it either way.
Right.
And I don't think I would want one of my guys to do it either. We got 2 outs left. I mean, we're down by 5
Right.
runs. Swing for the fences. We need to score some runs. We need base runners in that
Right.
sense.
yes,
Right.
I would agree.
I don't think I agree.
What you would
I'm
just
okay.
do it whenever?
I'm okay with it. Like my thing is, if you want the no hitter, play defense too. You know what I mean?
But that
If you don't want them to give it, I mean, do your scouting report. You know what I mean? Do your scouting report. If that guy is able to butt for hits, or I mean, even if he's
that's
not,
what I mean.
Yeah.
If he's not, and you're playing him how the scouting report says to play him,
Uh-huh.
and that guy is 0 for 3 and he's swung every time, and now he comes up and he's trying to bunt in a game that's lopsided,
Uh-huh.
and that's not part of his game,
Right.
then I'm offended by that. I think that's bad for the game.
So what are you gonna do about it? You gonna hit him the next time up?
I'm going to hit the next guy up because you're late enough in the
So
game in a
now-
lopsided game.
So now it's 5 to nothing. We got 2 guys on. The next dude hits a bomb. And now we got a 2-run ball game.
You know
got
what?
3 outs.
You still got 3 outs,
in the game.
and if you were throwing a no-no, you're
Right.
probably doing pretty well.
Right.
So you're fine.
So then, how do you feel about then? Because I feel like it's the same mentality. Steal it. Because I think I saw you vote.
Different
on
mentality
this.
in my
No,
mind.
it's not. Stealing late in the game when you're up.
No problem.
No
with it.
problem. I think it's the same thing.
Here's
If you-
why I don't think there's an issue with stealing. One,
First of all, I think it was 2-1 on the bunting or whatever. Because you guys.
yes, I'm
So
voting.
Are you against it in a lopsided game?
Lopsided game, I'm against.
I'm for it. I'm do your thing. You want to? It's my batting average. I want to get my batting average up. I don't want to get cut
It
next
depends
year.
on who. I think I agree. It depends on who it is.
Huh?
I think it depends on who it is. My team, Tice Farrell. Tice Farrell comes up late in the game, and we're down. Like
Shout out to Tice Farrell.
Shout out to Tice Farrell. I don't want him.
Right.
I don't want him to lay a bunt down
Right.
just to break up a no hitter.
Right.
I want him to go up and be aggressive and swing the bat.
Right, but
He
what
only
if
hits
but if
doubles
you're
anyway.
getting,
He only has doubles.
but if you're telling me that if you're getting beat 10 to nothing, right, and there's 2 outs in the game, and there's a no hitter, and you got a real slow guy up as a coach, and you just like,
I'm not doing it.
I've done nothing to this team to make them mad, right? Done nothing to them. You're not gonna be like, hey, go lay a bunt down. Let's
You
take
know
a
what
step
that
away,
is?
bro.
If
Those
they're
things-
shifted,
small
if
victories.
they're shifted,
It's a small
if they're
victories.
shifted,
You
I
know what
think
that
it's a
is?
different story.
That's Bush League.
No,
That's
it's not
what
Bush
that
League.
is.
It's not
Bush
Bush League. I completely disagree.
No, that is Bush
No
League.
way.
But if they're shifted,
No, it-
like if they're shifted, that's
Mhm.
another story.
Right.
Like,
The other piece to it that none of us are looking at is the guys that we're talking about typically will not get a successful bunt down because they're not good at bunting. They don't do it often.
Sorry,
But I'm
guys.
still offended, even if they don't,
Shout out Tice Farrell. Work on your bunting.
even if they don't get it down, if they miss, I'm still mad as an opposing coach that you thought that way, that you tried to do that in a game like that. I don't know. I think you're taking away from
I'm
something
against it in a
special.
lopsided game. There's my
Yes.
point. I'm against it.
I'm against it in a lopsided game.
But if it's a close game, I'm for it. because it's still a ball game and we're trying to win the game.
Yes.
But if you're doing it in spite of it in a late game like that, I think I can find myself on that side.
I think I'm cool with it. I'll probably, if it happens against us, mutter something negative underneath my breath. You know what I mean? But that's the extent of it, and then I just have to deal with it. So.
As long as the guy on deck knows he's probably about to get hit, then it's fine.
What if you're bunting, right? You're in a feud with the dude on deck, like I'm gonna bunt right here.
You know what's great about baseball though? Like really, when you look at sports, if a guy in basketball, when they're up 20, takes a last second layup and scores,
they get furious.
They do, but guess what? The game's over.
Yeah.
You lay a bunt down with 2 outs in the 9th inning to break up a no-hitter, that next guy's still got a hit.
Still going.
Right.
He's still got a hit, so he's gonna get hit.
Right.
So like the game takes care of itself and really polices itself more than any other,
Yeah.
and I love that.
That's a question that I guess everyone will have to ask themselves. As the game goes forward, are you okay with baseball policing itself, or do you want governing bodies to step in and tell people what they're doing? I'm okay with it. I'm assuming all three of us are like, I want baseball to police itself. I think it's good for the game. It's like for us, it'd be like taking fighting out of hockey. You know what I mean?
Right.
To hockey fans and hockey coaches, like they want it in there.
Yes, but it has to be fair based on age level too.
Yeah, we're not going to do anything silly.
Some of the best coaches that we've coached against are guys that we've been able to go up to, or they've been able to come up to us and say, hey, we both know that if that happened at a higher level,
Right.
this would be the response.
Right.
So make sure you talk to your guys.
I agree.
And as long as it's handled that way and coaches have an opportunity to talk to their players and teach, then you don't have to resort to starting to hit people. But
Right.
it does reach a level to where guys should know better, and hopefully their teammates take care of it. I mean, that happened to the Cubs the other day when Contreras thought something was gone and bat flipped and wasn't out of the box.
Right.
And the Cubs policed it by themselves. But
Right.
there's definitely pieces to that are pretty difficult. So some of that does depend on level. I mean, I'm not going to, in a 10U game, peg a 10-year-old
Right.
for that. I mean, that's ridiculous.
Right.
But in a 17U game, I might, because those kids have played long enough that they need to know what they're doing. I'm being honest about it.
Be careful.
Yeah, a high school game, if a guy knows what they're supposed to be doing there, now, you don't do anything with intent of harm. You make sure it's in a spot that they're not going to get hurt or do that. But
Right.
there's nothing wrong with sending a message. I don't think so.
Right.
Ask Roger Clemens. Shout out to Roger Clemens, avid listener.
Yeah,
The power of chin music is unbelievable.
Right.
Especially on your son.
That's the thing. You don't even have to hit him. People think like you got to hit him. No, you just got to send a message and say we know. Like we noticed what happened and we're not okay with it.
Right.
And as long as it's handled that way, you're fine.
Right. Well, you guys can both be wrong. It's okay.
That's fair.
Well,
No,
you're also the only one in the room that doesn't have a hat on.
I voted again. I'm
so
voting
right.
again. So my hair looks good today. What do I say? So,
Stealing late in the game.
still not again.
Again, lopsided game?
Huh?
It's got to be a lopsided game is what you're talking?
I don't know. Like that was. Did you pose that question?
That one was not
That one was
posed.
not posed.
But you're right with how I would have answered.
right.
And part of it,
My dad says stealing bases late in a game when you're up big late in the game. I don't care. So
if they're not holding you on
right.
and giving you the bag, then take the bag.
That I saw in a Cub game last year. Cubs were up like 8-2 in the 9th inning, and there were no outs. Runner on first. Rizzo's playing back, and the guy had a massive lead. He didn't steal, and Rizzo didn't hold him on. The guy could have easily taken the bag, and the announcers commented on it and said, it's like the unwritten rule of, he's not holding you on. Like we're both conceding here. I don't like the word conceding ever, especially in a game. If you're gonna get that bad, we've all been in games where
Right.
we've scored that many runs with 2 outs.
It's happened this year in Major League Baseball.
Yes, it has.
So that's the thing. A game is never out of reach in my mind,
Right,
unless a pitcher's throwing a no-hitter late in the game.
right,
Then it's out of
Right.
reach.
right. And this is probably the same mentality too. And I'll put this out there as how I feel about it. There's been those articles about basketball teams where a team beats another team 100-0, and people are in an outrage for it. And I'm just like, there are way worse things that can happen to you. Like, how are we supposed to tell this team to stop scoring? You know what I mean?
Same with high school football. Recently, high school football-wise, there's been some outrageous scores.
Right.
But you're on a play clock.
Right.
And you can't tell an offense to
Just take a knee. What's
you
more
can-
embarrassing
yeah,
to an
you can
opposing
just tell
team?
an offense
Like
to
getting
take a knee.
scored on or taking a knee?
And that's completely acceptable. If a team gets beat 7-9 and nothing, as long as they're not keeping their number
Right.
one team in for the whole game and they're running inside the tackles, they're running up the middle, and they just keep scoring, you're going to tell your running back to run out of bounds?
Right.
Right. And that's where I'm at. If you're stretching a double into a triple when you're killing a team and it's going to be a close play, I don't think you should be doing that. But if you have a guy on second base and there's a double off the wall, there's no need for, after that double off the wall, to have first and third because you're not sending guys.
Right.
I mean, I'm more embarrassed as a coach if you're going station to station and there's a pass ball and you're on third and you're not scoring. I think that's more offensive than you taking the bag.
But
like if it's given, take it.
Yeah.
And that's what it is. If you're not holding somebody on, you're giving them that bag. Take the bag if they're going to give it to you.
Right. What about just straight stealing though? Like when you're being held on. Like I mean, a lot of people do have. I mean, I've heard plenty of parents and coaches for other teams that don't know at a younger age group to just play back and whatever. They're holding them on, and then the guy steals, and then I hear like, "Oh, stealing up this bigger."
I have an issue with it.
Stop that.
I have an issue with it at the major league level because pitchers are good enough that if you're up 10-0 late in a game, nothing's going to change. There's no need for it, and I think that is showing up in other team. If you were playing travel baseball, and we're looking at this idea of tiebreakers based on runs against or run differential. You're trying to save pitching for later in the tournament.
Yes.
And we're in the third inning and I'm up 11-0 and I need one more or whatever it is based on the tournament to win and save pitching. I'm going to continue to steal bases, continue to bunt, continue to play the game so that I'm set up to win a tournament because I'm not looking to win just that game.
Right.
Same thing if we're up 11-0 and they have a runner on third and it's runs against. I'm still playing in up 11-0 to stop that run so our runs against don't.
We're not being very introspective here because I'm sure this is when other coaches like have yelled at us.
They have.
And so shout out to all those coaches that don't understand that. Like, we're saving pitching. We're coming off as really big jerks.
No, because we're not because
wait till you see the comments.
Because the flip side is if we're down 11-0 with the runner on third and they play in, I get it.
Right.
I'm not offended by it. That's the thing. What the biggest thing in the coaching world is whatever you are okay with doing, you can't be offended by somebody doing to you.
Absolutely.
And that's if you can live in that world, then you're fine.
Right. Well, like pastime tournaments, for example, they have that 8-run cap. Whether it's 8 runs against or 8 runs allowed, no matter what the score is.
Right. Even 30-0, it's 8 for run.
If we're getting whipped 12-0 in the third inning, I'm completely fine with getting run ruled and getting out of that in 3 innings because I know that it's only going to be 8 against. But that saves 2 extra innings of arms that I need for that second, third round of the tournament.
Right.
So it's totally fine playing that type of game, in my opinion. And if I'm on the winning side of it, it's even better because I get to save my number 1 reliever for that first game of the tournament to be able to get into that semifinals.
Right.
Yeah.
Totally.
And as a baseball fan and coach of both travel and high school, I hate that about travel ball because I think you lose some of like that in-game situation of understanding because you have to play for a tournament rather than just that game. Mm-hmm. Like if you're playing in just a single game for high school ball and you're up 11-0 and they have a runner on third, you're not playing your infield in.
Right.
But so I think you lose that mindset a little bit. And when you're trying to teach kids the right way to play, you have some 10 and 11-year-olds that think, oh, runner on third, our infield should always be in. But as long as you're teaching them the right way to do that and then explaining after the game, like, hey, we only did this based on situation in the tournament, what we needed to do, then I think it's fine. But you have to look at tournament rules and you have to play to that in order to set yourself up to win a tournament. That's the end of the day. That's why you play travel ball. You have to develop players and to do that. Right. But if you're just in it to win pool play games, then you're going home early on Sundays. Maybe that's good.
Right. I think
for some people, they like their Sunday.
I think a good example of stealing bases while big was last fall season. We went out and watched Georgia's team play, and we had told the coaches early on of we're implementing the new base running style.
Yes.
So to use that to your advantage of perfecting the system, even though it means running up the score a little bit, and George handled it perfectly. They got up like 8-9 runs, and he went over and had a conversation with the coach and said, hey, we're really not trying to run the score up and be those guys. We've got a new base running system that we're trying to teach the kids, and they stole, 16, 17 bases that game?
Right.
But they ran the bases awesome in that modern league. So he handled it really well, and that's what the integrity still withholds, even though they're stealing while up big.
Right, and I think the difference for a lot of people is like we have a base running system that we implement, and a lot of people don't. It's just get your lead off and steal or on a pass ball.
Right.
So for teams, and the Kansas City Royals were like this, and Ned Yost, shout out to Ned Yost. We worked with him on that. It was awesome. But he was telling us when the Royals won the series, teams would get mad at them for stealing late in games too, but they couldn't hit. Like, they were not a great hitting team. Their game was get on the bases, steal bases, create havoc, and score.
Right.
So when you're up a few runs, 3-4 runs late in the game, they know they don't score well, so they're doing what their team does to win. I mean, every team has to have an identity to be successful. And if base running is part of your identity, then I don't have a problem with you continuing to run because I'm not going to ask you to not do things. It's part of how you play.
Right.
So I don't know. I think some of it does break down to team, and it's hard to know that in travel. That's the difficult part is you could be playing a team from out of state, and that's what they do, and you don't know it until you get there, and then suddenly they're running on you.
Stealing second if nobody's holding you. We're
Fine.
agreed on that one.
Yeah, fine.
Stealing third if nobody's holding you and you're working on getting good jumps.
Absolutely.
On third base, pitcher's got a slow wind up. You're still up and you try and streak still home.
I'm fine with it because here's the deal. I'm fine with it because that one out of the other two bases is the most challenging base to steal. And if we're out here working on stuff, working on jumps, I think learning to steal home, which is definitely the hardest base to steal, happens the least amount of time. If we're out here working on stuff, that's what I'm working on. Just because it counts as a run, you know what I mean? And it may look bad because it does count as a run, doesn't mean that we shouldn't be doing it. If we're under this theme and this mentality of we're out here working on stuff, that's the hardest one. We gotta get working on it. That's the one you need, sometimes you need the most. You know, we've stolen plenty of times with 2 outs, 2 strikes, and a guy that's up struggling to hit. You know what I mean? Like, the only reason that we ever do it successfully is because we're working on it in practice, and we do it a lot in games.
Right.
So if there's an opportunity to work on it when it doesn't really matter that much, I'm cool with it. It's gonna make the other guy mad. But hey, they're gonna probably hit us the next time up. But I like free bases, so I'm cool with that too.
And that's the funniest part. We preach free bases.
Yeah.
So in our mind, when people are like, "Fine, if you do that, we'll hit you." We're like, "Great,
cool."
Then we'll steal second again.
Right. There's very little, I guess, on a baseball field that I get that offended by, but unless you yell at me from across the field. Shout out to Josh Barber for doing that in the National years ago.
Which brings us to our next one, actually. And this is a really funny story because the first year we coached together, one of the coaches that's now been with us since year 2 for us, Josh Barber, we met him from coaching against him, and we had figured out the signs that he was giving to his catcher, and Adam was giving to our hitter.
That's not why I yelled out what I yelled, but go ahead.
Right, but Adam was giving to our hitter based on what he was saying to our hitter. He wasn't just saying, "Hey, fastball, hey, curveball," but he was giving our hitter the pitch, fastball or curveball, based on something he was saying that we're not giving away. Because
I don't know if Josh knows that I was doing that.
Well, now he does.
Now he does.
Now he does.
Now he does. Now he knows that I was. But what I did, this is what Josh yelled at me for, and I'll just to clear it up. So his son is the catcher, Drew Barber, who's a phenomenal catcher, and he was on an 0-2 count or a 1-2 count, calling fastball, and then would do this with his glove. Like right after he called the pitch.
They were 12.
They were 12.
Just for context.
They were 12. They were not 13 1 year up. So, but they were
13.
Touching his glove in the air right after he called fastball, which clearly means we're putting this ball up in the air. And I said, which means throw a fastball up right here. You know what I mean? To me, as a catcher, I knew that was what he's doing, and all I said was, "Don't swing at anything out of the zone." And Josh took.
I think you said "Don't chase high"
or "Don't chase high," something like that. But I wasn't.
Bit of a difference.
But now you outed me as telling them what pitches they were hitting. So,
fine.
But that was what Josh took exception to. Josh yelled at me from across the diamond, said, "Hey, you just gonna let him know what we're throwing now?" And I said, "Are you gonna something about like he's telling us where he's throwing it?" And yelled back at him. We went back and forth a few times. Made up. Now he coaches with us. But. That was what he took exception to. But it is along with the same theme of tipping pitches. We're looking at them. But go ahead, sorry.
We had a coach when I was growing up that if he was able to catch on to signs that were being given from the dugout, if he had some type of in between pitch saying to us, if he said our first name, it was fastball. If he said our last name, it was something off speed. So I mean, I don't think it's necessarily completely totally out of the question. But I mean,
It's a game of adjustments.
Josh hates that. Josh hates that.
You have to be able to adjust.
He's gonna punch me in the face.
You have to be able to adjust as a coach if people are giving away your pitches and doing those things, being able to switch that up. I personally don't like it. I think it doesn't.
Unwritten
I
rule
think
or bush league or both? Is it an unwritten rule that you don't? Because that's what we're talking about. Unwritten rules. Are you breaking an unwritten rule if you're?
I think you're breaking an unwritten rule, but I don't think it's bush league.
When you do what? When you're doing what?
When you give away fastball, curveball from what the coach is calling.
Okay.
Or if you can see it from the catcher as a coach or as a base runner. I don't think there's anything wrong with that as far as being bush league. I think it's an unwritten rule not to, but it's widely acceptable from second base to give the sign to the hitter, and that's why catcher's signs change when you're out there. We like to teach our guys when they're on second not to necessarily give it to the hitter because we want to still know what's being called so we can steal third. But that's, again, part of our base running program. So we don't want to have them change their signs up to where it's harder for us to take the bag. And we trust that our hitters, based on approach training, can adjust to what they're seeing without having to know from our guy in second. The one that I'm very offended by, like every time it happens, is when the hitter is standing in the box and peeking back at the catcher when the catcher is giving signs. I think that is terrible. I think that is bush league. I think that is wrong. And I think coaches that don't address that for their own players should be fired immediately.
So in your mind,
coaches that there's two types of coaches that drive me crazy. Coaches that allow that and coaches that tuck their ears into their hat.
And coaches that pull wagons. Shout out to George Booth.
I like coaches that pull wagons. That is practical.
No wagons. Carry your buckets. No.
And if you're wearing it's cold and you got like a winter hat, that's cool. But don't give me this look out on the bases. I don't like it.
Man. You should
What
keep
if their
it like
head's
that.
too small and their ears naturally go into it?
You do have a small head, bro. You have a small head.
I know I have a small head.
Now,
because I might have offended people and we might have lost 2 listeners by that, I will rock this for the rest of the podcast.
That's fine. So in your mind, when it comes to stealing pitches, that's the one and only that you feel is an unwritten rule you don't do.
That's the one and only that I think is bush league.
Okay.
I think they're all unwritten rules except taking them from second.
Okay, gotcha.
Or if your catcher
it's an unwritten rule, you don't do it.
If your catcher is bad and you can see the sign from any base, I think that's fine. But at a young age, I like when coaches will tell you, or if we see it, we'll tell the other coach, like, hey, based on your catcher, make sure he's in this spot. I think it's all of our jobs as coaches to make the game better in general, as a whole. So the more that we can help other coaches from other programs, I think there's nothing wrong with that. But it gets back to what we talked about last week of being so competitive that we refuse to help. If we all have that same goal in mind, then I'm going to help another team, another catcher at 12. I'm not helping you at 15, and I'm not helping you in the 5th inning of a tie game on a Sunday, but I'll tell you after.
Right.
I will definitely tell you after.
Yeah. Turn your hat back on. You're driving.
Isn't this rough? See, it drives you crazy too.
So, funny story about batters tipping, getting signs, looking back at the catcher. It's about 3 years ago, we were playing up in Central Michigan, and I had a kid play for me that he did that frequently, and I think for the most part he was pretty good at it, but still hit like $120. But we were in the semifinal game, and he ended up turning back and looking and saw the middle finger. I think we all know what the middle finger means when you see it as when you give that type of sign. And it just so happened he got hit that next pitch. Okay. And kid's 6'3", 220 pounds. Really somebody I personally wouldn't even want to mess with.
Right.
Drops his bat down to his side, chucks it back to the dugout, takes about 3 steps towards the pitcher's mound. I'm standing on third base and locked up, like,
please don't do it.
Oh God, please don't do it. What am I going to do? The coach did the same thing. Him and I looked at each other, and then I finally yelled at him to get down. And there was a big plate meeting. Everything ended up happening, and the coach's response to it was, well, they've been playing together since they were like 10 years old, and he was giving them the middle finger, calling him a sissy, and was telling him to throw it harder, and it just so happened to miss him. I didn't buy it one bit, but still, developing wise, had to have that conversation with them. Like, look, they might do that in the MLB, but bench clearings are not something that we need to have happen at this type level. That is 100% unacceptable.
Right.
No. Right. But he should have also acknowledged that he shouldn't have been looking back at the signs.
Right. So in your mind, what is acceptable and what is not acceptable when it comes to stealing pitches?
I'm going to agree here with the second base. Runners at second base, if you as a coaching staff and as a program team have a system in place with base runners tipping pitch and location, I mean, that's totally fine. Same with what we talked about a little bit ago. Be able to adapt as the game goes on. So if they start doing that, switch your signs up. Don't get mad about it. fix it. Now,
Location's an interesting one that I'm not so sure I like. Guy on second giving location, and I don't know the difference. Like in my mind, I don't know what separates those for me. But like if the catcher sets up in, out, up, or down, like I find it kind of bush league for the guy on second to tell you where he's set up. Pitch type is one thing, and I can't tell you why because I think like I know that's wrong. Saying it, I shouldn't feel like I need to be the same on both, but I'm not. And maybe the catcher should set up later.
That one, I guess.
Yeah, I haven't either until you
because
said
I also just think that probably most times kids don't have enough command for that to work out and to benefit on a regular basis.
Right.
You know,
you can screw up your hitter more than you help him by giving locations.
As a catcher, so as a catching instructor and as a catcher, should that base runner be able to make that type of decision and give that sign early enough with them being set up?
If you're catching correctly and doing your locations correctly and presenting them well, they shouldn't know. They shouldn't know until
Should not know.
They should not know. They should not know where the location of the pitch is going to be until they're mid motion. You know
so then, on that note, would you then place the fault of bush league on the base runner being able to figure it out and call it, or place blame on your catcher?
On the catcher. On the catcher. And our catcher.
Drew.
And we mentioned. You know what? No, we mentioned it to Drew, and Drew did that when he was 13.
Yeah.
Right, which I think a lot of young catchers do. Yeah. But we also saw the same catcher last year at 17 when he called an outside curveball with 2 strikes, stay down the middle, and as the pitcher was getting ready to throw, slap his glove on that inside part of the plate in the dirt. So batter thought, oh, he's moving to the inside, and then set up on the outside and freeze a kid.
It's phenomenal.
So catchers can also work in the opposite way and if they're going to call locations, fine, let's give them a location and then change it. So there's always a response and an ability to adjust.
David Ross is one of the best that I ever saw in the majors do that. He would do that.
He did that in the series, and I got goosebumps.
Right.
It was awesome.
It was awesome. I would equate it to like you have to always defend against things in baseball. Everybody's trying to find an edge, and no one's going to agree on where those edges should end and get those advantages should end. So you need to defend against it no matter what, regardless of whether or not you think it's an unwritten rule or not. Don't assume that they're not going to do it. But I would equate it to like if I'm playing poker and when you're looking and I'm sitting right next to you and you hold your hand up and look at it and you make it like blatantly and hold it up like this and I can see it. I mean that's your fault. So if you're going to make it really obvious to what you're calling, I mean I don't see any difference from picking up on what a kid's signs are and noticing that whenever a guy is going to throw a curveball, he double pumps in the middle of his windup. We know you're throwing a curveball. You're tipping your pitches. I see this as the exact same thing. Now, if someone's looking at their cards like this and you do this to try to look at it, that's when you're breaking a rule. So if you're in the batter's box and you're doing this trying to look at it, I mean, as a catcher, I'm just going to stand there and stare at you, and you're going to look like a moron.
So let me throw something out at you guys real quick. So I'm in my master's program right now, which is for coaching, education, athlete development. One of the classes we just finished up with was ethics in sports. There was a period in one of the modules where we had discussion boards about the teachings of ethics to our student athletes. One of them being they call it gamesmanship, of finding that gray area in the rules and using it to your advantage. So in that sense, what you just talked about right there, finding that edge, whatever that edge is, finding that tip and using their disadvantage to your advantage. Where does that line get drawn of teaching the kids how to play the game the right way versus teaching them to be morally ethical? And this is the craziest thing I've ever heard of, but one of the articles that we had to read on talked about the idea of coaches and umpires collaborating together to make sure that the call is correct.
I will do this. If they screw up a call, and I'm coaching third, and that guy's out at third, and they call him safe, I will tell the third baseman, wow, he was out. But I'm not telling the umpire, hey, take this guy off the bag. He was out. Change the game. Absolutely not. That's a great break. And part of the beauty of baseball is human error. And I hate it a lot of times. I love it other times. It's a great part of the game.
No automated instructions ever.
Part of what you said is just this idea that in our mind, you either live in the gray area or you teach the right way to play. And I fully believe that the right way to play the game is in the gray area. I mean, if you're not taking advantage of other teams in regards to things they don't do well, things they haven't been trained on, then we're not going to be successful. Because at the end of the day, you don't keep your job as a coach or grow a program or grow a brand in general by making a lot of friends.
Yeah.
That's not what you do.
So
You win games, you win tournaments, you get guys recognized. That's how you build a program. That's how you keep your job. No one's going to ask you, hey, how many friends do you have? No, what's your record? What's your career record? That's how you keep jobs and get into the Hall of Fame.
Yeah. So other than the one guy who he helps run a travel organization in Virginia, him and I are very similar on a lot of things. And I got a lot of wrath from the idea of you got a slow guy on third base. Take advantage of that. If you got a team full of fast guys that can bunt, exploit that weakness that you've got somebody who's not fast on third base, lay a bunt down, and beat him with a small ball game.
Yeah.
What's the wrong in that?
Nothing. I'm just biting my tongue because I did that to a team at the 1A level when I coached there a couple of years ago and got a lot of flack for doing it. I don't know if I should tell that story or not. Probably should.
I don't care. We
That's
only had
true.
140 views in the last video. Who we offended?
So, and maybe it was Bush League. I don't know. But we played a team that was currently ranked in the top 10 in the state at the 1A level. We were not. Talent-wise, we were very average, but they were a very disciplined team that bought into base running. And it just so happened to be the school of the deaf. And they were very, very good, very talented. But obviously, being an IHSA sanctioned event, there are certain advantages and disadvantages of both teams. So we maximized our base running opportunities when they would come set. Based on our base running approach, we knew the pitcher that was on the mound could not see us at first base. When he would look, he did not have the vision to see us. So we would take the bag because we knew they couldn't communicate to let him know to throw over. So he would catch the ball back on the pitcher's mound and turn around and realize that we were now on second base instead of first. And we won the game. And is that Bush League? Does it make me a terrible person? Yes. Was it Bush League? I don't know. But when you're playing a top 10 team in the state, and what you do is that we don't hit. We were not a good hitting team. All we did was run the bases. What could we do other than that to win the game? You know
I
what
thought
mean?
you were going to say there was a really slow guy on
No slow guy.
I thought you were going to say that they had a really slow guy
No,
on
I'm a
third,
bad
and
person,
you did like
apparently.
5 straight bunts down the line. And I was
We've done that too.
Do it. No, I was going to say exploit the chink in the armor, but whew, yeah.
And that's the hard part. If it's a state sanctioned event and they're playing in a state sanctioned event, I found it personally, I would be offended if I was coaching
We're
a
going to
team.
be on Yahoo.
Probably. Maybe we should cut this before.
We'll discuss that afterwards. I'm going to mark down the time, 5:26. Okay.
Shout out. No. But I would be offended when you're playing in a game like that. I would be offended if people didn't treat it like a regular game. You know what I mean? Like, they were a really talented, good team. So in my mind, we had to treat it like a regular game. And in a regular game, I'm going to find the other team's weakness to go ahead and exploit that.
Right.
And that's what we did. So there was mixed reactions and mixed feelings to that, and I totally understand that. But at the end of the day, if you're trying to figure out ways to win a game, what you do when you scout is what? Look for teams' weaknesses. You shift guys because they have a weakness. And this team had very few weaknesses, except their pitcher could not see, which caused us to do that. Now, if their pitcher can see us and we take off, there's no reason for that communication because he can step off and throw over. So we didn't take advantage of it in the sense that we were just going. We tested everything and used our base running approach to realize he can't see us. So if he can't see us, we're going to take the bag.
And my assumption, if that coach was a good coach, learning from that game there would then install a communication between the pitcher and the catcher for the catcher to have a movement cue for the pitcher to step off.
Right.
So
Right. And that's what I mean. There's always an adjustment that can be made. And lucky for us in that game, they did not make that adjustment until it was late.
Right.
They did put that in about the 5th inning, but at that point the game was out of reach, so there was no chance. But if they put that in early, they probably beat us because they were talent-wise a better team than us.
Right.
So I don't know. I mean, it comes down to at the end of the day, like we said, if whatever you do to other teams, the expectation is you're okay with teams doing that to you.
Right.
And I am.
Right.
I mean, we're going to find ways to win. If that's the goal, then I don't understand why baseball, more than any other sport, has a lot of these rules that are not actual rules of what's okay and what isn't.
Well, what about ones, unwritten rules that honestly don't have any effect on winning or losing of the game? For example, you ground out to the shortstop, you're on the third base side dugout, you get out at first base, you're running back to the dugout, and you run just a little too close to the pitcher's mound.
A little too close is different than right over the pitcher's mound.
Okay, what if you run in the dirt? Is that run in the dirt of the pitcher's mound? Are you supposed to go completely around? Because I've heard, I don't remember what the percentages were on that. I feel like the majority.
High 70s said don't go on the pitcher's mound.
Don't go on the pitcher's mound?
Yes.
And my question is why, other than the pitcher's being an emotional baby?
Well,
give me a reason other than them just being overly emotional.
Let's start here. Pitchers are definitely that.
Yeah. Yeah. I just saw the first example of this I saw.
They are very unique.
I wish I should have looked up who the players were, but it was an Oakland A's, I think, versus Yankees game. I think Alex Rodriguez might have ran back to the dugout. Dallas Braden, yes. Dallas Braden lost his mind. And that was the first time I had ever heard of that, even playing for a long time. I had never heard of someone being upset about that. And I was like, why is he so going crazy about it? Maybe I have a skewed view of it just because I thought he went berserk and was way over the top or something that I didn't think.
Shout out to A-Rod, though.
Shout out to A-Rod, avid listener.
Him and
Dallas
J-Lo
Braden,
both.
don't listen to this stupid picture. What do you guys think of that? So
I think that was the first time that I had ever thought of it.
What did you think initially when you saw that? Like, were you thinking like, yeah, you shouldn't do that, or like, why is Dallas Braden?
As soon as I saw it, I think that was the first thought. I was like, even though I'm a Yankees and A-Rod, avid Yankees and A-Rod fan,
okay.
If it would have happened to the Yankees and whoever was on the mound at that point in time would have gotten mad, I would be in the defensive mode about it. Like, that's his mound. He's throwing the gym right now. Why are you crossing his?
I don't
weird.
think there's
Like,
any reason to go across the mound. I think that's why it offends me.
I don't think there's any reason to be that upset about it.
Well, based on where the
that.
dugouts are, there's no reason to just go across the pitcher's mound.
So what there, if there's foul, and which is I feel like Dallas Braden found like that was a foul thing to do. What's the harm? Where there's harm, there's foul. You know what I mean? So
I don't think there's
harm.
I don't think there's any harm.
So
I don't think there's any harm.
So why are you 60%? And this is a good thing to comment about. Everybody that voted, yeah, you don't do that. I would love to know at the bottom of the video.
That's a great
Let us know why you think
between your comments and me being a terrible person, try to include this in there too.
In the middle of that.
Just randomly sprinkle those in too.
I don't remember. Was it at Oakland?
It was in Oakland.
Okay. So I think I would put that more on territory.
Territory?
Protection of territory.
But I've seen it now that I know about that, but I've seen it happen in travel ball games. Like, that's nobody's home field.
That's nobody's territory, but at that point in time, the pitcher mound is his territory. I coached high school football for 5 years, and it used to drive me nuts to the point where I was hoping there was a sideline clearing when the other team, before the game started, would celebrate at our midfield. That's my home. That's my midfield. That's our turf. Don't mess with my midfield.
Like when the Dodgers got in the pool in Arizona after they won the wild card game. Don't celebrate there. I don't know.
I think it's territorial.
Right.
I think it has a lot to do with territory and the protection of your turf. And at that point in time, even in the world of travel ball, the pitcher's mound is his realm. That's his domain.
I think the only foul in it is if it's an attempt to get under somebody's skin.
That's exactly why I would do it.
Right, but I also am not offended by that.
Right. Well, yeah. So, like, I think it's and I probably made too many analogies that probably aren't that good. But I compare it to a guy. We tell a guy if a pitcher's in a rhythm, go up there and call time 3 times.
Untie your shoe before you get
Untie your shoe. Call time 3 times in at bat. Throw him off of his rhythm. If it's a 2-0 ball game and we can't get to this guy, I'm gonna say bunt when we have no hits. I'm gonna say do something to get under this dude's skin. I want him thinking about anything other than the rhythm that he is in. And if that guy doesn't pitch that well because we go over and we run across the pitcher's mound and drag our feet, by all means, I'm doing it.
Now, but would that get under your skin as a coach or as a pitcher?
No, because I have better things to think about. I 100%. You got guy
If
can
I'm a
take.
pitcher, everything gets under my skin.
Right.
Huh? Like,
But I think that
as a
right
coach,
there
I
for
would
me,
not care.
That for me goes back to the very first question that we had was it depends if it's going against me or if it's us doing it.
Yeah.
Kind of that one player to where you
Yeah.
hate playing against him, but he's your favorite teammate.
Yeah. Well, I mean, as a coach, if a guy runs across the pitcher's mound and our pitcher gets mad at him, I'm probably going to yell at the pitcher like, "Hey, don't fall for that. We're winning. Like you're dealing against these guys. Like who cares? Like
Yeah.
I just don't find I don't know really that much offense with it.
I don't either. The other one that people always get offended, or some people get offended by, that I personally love as a middle infield guy, is if somebody takes off to steal and they don't peek to see where if the guy put the ball in play at all. I am totally fine with my shortstop rolling into second base with his hands up, telling him it's a foul ball.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Let him go back.
Yeah,
Let him go back, because that Bush League, I don't think so.
Yeah,
I
no.
think if you don't know where the ball is when you're stealing, that's on you. If you can't hear it, you don't see it, that's on you. I'm going to tell you foul ball, and I'm going to watch you try to go back to first base, and then we're going to get you in a rundown and tag you
I mean,
out.
Jeter would fake throw and deep guys like that all the time.
Oh yeah,
Man,
Jeter
I
would
think it's
pretend that
great.
it was a double play ball on a double to the wall and roll through the bag so that guy would slide into second and couldn't advance.
Or
And I loved it.
the intentional drop of a fly ball to get the speed
That's
runner
just
out
smart.
at first
I think it's
Yeah.
just smart.
versus
Altuve did it a couple weeks ago.
Right.
that's what I'm talking
I've
about.
And
seen
turn
guys-
two. He dropped the ball.
Did it touch his glove? What's
No.
the rule on that? Because I've seen umpires say
They'll call it an out if you have control of it and kind of like catch it and throw
Okay.
it down. So you kind of got to make it look like
I
you
saw an
didn't do it
Astros
on
game
purpose.
where
that-
But Altuve went for it, let it drop in front of him, threw it to first to get
Right.
that out because the other guy was off far enough. And when the ball drops, your instinct is to go.
Right.
And then they got that guy in a rundown to turn two. If you'd have gone to second first, they wouldn't have
Now
gotten.
I heard somebody talking about that you have to make an attempt at it. Why is it against the rules to literally stand underneath it and drop? What's the rule on that? Or I guess my question is that
Well,
against the rules?
I wish I could post it. I'll post a video on our page at some point. But I saw a video of it. It was an Astros game. Second baseman. It wasn't Altuve at the time. I don't remember who it was before him, but he did this, and they just let it drop right. He just did this, let it drop right in front of him. Picked it up, threw it out. The guy out at second, and the umpire said no, the batter's
Really?
out, and you stay at first.
What's the justification?
I don't know. I don't know what the ruling is on that. I just think that's
Yeah, I'd like to see the ruling on it in regards
Yeah.
to like what that line
There's probably
is.
some sort of judgment thing there because I
Yeah.
feel like, I mean, people get away with it so often. I mean, Baez will do it on a play where it looks like he's going to slide and catch a ball. He'll let it drop and then quickly turn into a double play. So there's got to be some sort of fine line that it's a judgment call on the umpire, but I don't know what that is.
Yeah, that'd be an interesting one to look up.
I'll find that video and I'll post it out so people can see what I'm talking about. But yeah, that's good stuff. The one thing you absolutely do not do, and this is an unwritten rule. I know actually it's not an unwritten rule. It's it is a written rule, I believe. Fake tag.
Fake tag.
You can't do that, right?
It's illegal in travel.
Right.
I'm not sure about college. Professional, it's legal, but very unwritten in
It
regards
happened
to you don't
to-
do it. Harper was
Yeah.
ready to
Harper.
lose his mind. Well, Harper wakes up ready to lose his mind.
Yeah,
but
he is.
but he was
I
definitely.
think he actually. I mean, he might have over.
He had grounds to stand on him.
But
it's just dangerous.
I think he might have gotten hurt or took it
Close
a little
to it.
dramatically to where he acted like he was to make it
Yeah.
more of a big
Fake-
deal.
And that's where I really draw the lines. If it's dangerous to a player's health,
Uh-huh.
and that's really why you don't fake tag. Because if
Yeah.
you show it late and they slide late, it's dangerous then.
Yeah, for people that don't know what we're talking about a runner going into a bag where there's no throw, the infielder acting like he grabs the ball and a throw, putting down a tag, and the guy sliding late due to a late tag and then hurting himself.
Right. If it's a harm issue like that,
Yeah, absolutely, I don't think that's right.
then I take offense to it and take
That's
issue
when
to
you're
it.
going to see that retaliation.
Right, and that's why I dislike the retaliation of trying to like hit somebody or hurt somebody.
Mhm.
If you throw inside a little bit and you
Right.
send a message, I'm cool with that.
Right.
But when it gets into like intentionally throwing in a place that could hurt a hitter,
Mhm.
then I think the whole game of baseball should take offense to that.
Right.
But
I
that's,
think,
that's not good for the game.
I think Major League Baseball does a for the most part does a good job. You'll have your outliers of guys that don't follow the directions well, but of it policing itself. You know, one team guy's a guy that gets hit, the next team hits another guy.
Mhm.
It usually ends itself there for the most part. But I mean, you will have your outliers that take major offense to it. It's like it's just part of it. You got to go. You know what I mean?
It heightens in the rivalry.
Yeah,
it does
for sure. Mm-hmm.
It does. And then the bullpen comes in late, acting like they're going to do something. They're just running out to run back to the bullpen.
Bro, we used to play together 2 years ago. Yeah.
Well, like I know as a first baseman, if there was a close play in the infield that the infield ends up bobbling, no throw made. I mean, I was very instinctive to.
Right.
Stepped on your foot. To step out and do the glove smack to make that runner think that he's got to go all the way through because the glove or play was made. Right. Versus making some type of turn and look.
Right. And we glove smack and bluff all the time in regards to trying to hold runners, and I think there's a lot to that, and it's a fine line between that and a fake tag. And I think that fine line is injury based.
Right.
So holding the runner is great, but not at the expense of somebody.
Are there any other glaring ones that we're not thinking about or that we haven't talked about yet? Like what's
I don't think so.
Right.
I think we've gotten, and there's a lot more, and there's a lot of superstitions. We could probably do a second week in regards to superstitions and what that looks like too. And we got to watch Nomar if we're talking superstitions. But I think, in conclusion, one of where we all agree is whatever you are okay doing, you have to be okay with being done to you. And if that happens, you can't have a different line of what that is. We're all also in agreement that I'm apparently an incredibly terrible person.
Hey man, I mean you're still here.
And look really bad with my ears inside of my hat. So this is my last podcast. I hope you guys enjoyed me, but I will not be back.
Board meeting to devote. No, just kidding.
Yeah, absolutely. At that point. So my last question to end with is, speaking of benches clearing, best pitcher victory in a benches clearing brawl. Was it Nolan Ryan or was it Kyle Farnsworth?
Kyle Farnsworth, in my opinion.
He got a full tackle in.
Yeah, he got a full tackle. It was less of a victory for Nolan Ryan and more of a major embarrassment by, and I forget the guy's name. Robin Ventura running out there and getting in that immediate headlock and taking a few blows to the head. That's more of a poor you than it was like a huge victory for him. But Kyle Farnsworth straight told that dude to come out here. It takes 2 steps and just plows into him, just drops him, and then gets 3 or 4 good punches in while trying to be pulled off. I mean, Kyle Farnsworth is a maniac based on some of his previous stuff that he did in the minors, but I think that was the biggest victory.
Who you got?
I'm going to have to go Nolan Ryan because he's a distant relative of mine.
Also an avid
shout out Nolan Ryan.
I think one of the dirtiest ones that I recall of, and it's not necessarily for the blow, but there was a Yankees-Red Sox clearing where Pedro Martinez threw down Popeye.
I don't think he threw him down. What's he doing out there? Stay on the bench before you get hurt. You know what I mean?
You know what? Just because of George Boots and how old he is, shout out to George Boots and Clint Walker, also probably about that same age. I would trust those two to be out in a benches clearing brawl, and I'm not throwing either of them down. So no, Pedro should not have done that.
Don't you think Pedro could have easily landed a solid right hand against his cheek? But or did he do him a favor by gingerly laying him down?
Or he could have just walked away.
Huh? You came at me, bro. You came at me, bro. I don't know.
I don't know, but I am a true Yankee fan. So anything that the Red Sox do,
Gotcha. So Kyle Farnsworth.
I'm with Farns.
Right. And
we're also
Cub
Cub fans, but yeah.
Is that Sean Casey?
Nolan Ryan was pretty cool. I don't know. I hope so because he's a big dude. I don't remember who it was.
I vote for the Nolan Ryan one because he has one of the most famous pictures ever.
And they've both signed it.
Yeah.
And they've both signed the picture. That's kind of cool. I do like that. But I think all in all, this has been very interesting about the blurred lines of baseball, and that's exactly what they are. There's very blurred lines that nobody can agree on. And
if I'm sure there's plenty of ones we didn't mention in this short amount of time. So if there's ones that you guys are thinking of that you were annoyed by, let us know if you disagreed with us on anything. Comment for other ones that that we didn't mention, and let's get a discussion going. Let's find out where those lines begin and end, and who we can piss off throughout the next the next travel season, and the next high school season. So, Mr. Wickliff, appreciate you being here.
Hey, much appreciated.
Post it out on our Facebook, our Instagram, and our YouTube page. Like, comment, and subscribe. And we'll see you guys next week. Cool.
And I really hope that you guys invite me back for the superstition one, because I am